at the PDAC 2020 Core Shack for our company Minaurum Gold, and I'm here with Steve Maynard, our VP of Exploration. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sonny. Good to be here. This is the result of 3 years of mapping and sampling on the Alamos Project in Sonora.
And you overseeing pretty much our phase 1 drilling, 18,000 meters, 40 holes, the whole shebang.
Yeah, that's right. I'm the Vice President of Exploration and I manage the Alamos Project. We have, in our geological mapping, we have a team of geologists working on that have worked on this. That includes me. We have mapped the area at a scale of 1 to 2,000, and this is compiled on this map at 10,000 scale.
Okay.
So there's a considerable amount of detail in here, and there's more details that for the sake of presentation, don't show on this map. But what it shows is a distribution of rock types that crop out in the Alamos Project area. Andesites in purple, the blue shows limestone outcrops, the green is a paleotalus deposit. The beige color are intrusive rocks, most of which are batholithic rocks, but we have combined a few rock types into that category for simplicity's sake. And we have a quartz monzonite intrusive stock here in the southern part of the project area. The red lines are, of course, what are of interest to us here. Sonny, these show the vein zones that we have described.
Right.
We have described 25 vein zones on the Alamos Project.
And those vein zones, just to clarify, they're not just individual vein itself. There are multiple veins.
They're zones that contain veins that are host to vein mineralization.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
They are, in most cases, they coincide with significant faults. That is a fracture along which movement has occurred.
Right. Okay.
So, that's what these red lines indicate on this map. Now, it's probably hard to see from that the point of view of the camera, but there are green dots here that show the collars of our exploration holes.
Right. Yeah.
We drilled 40 holes over a period of a couple of years, totaling almost 19,000 meters.
Yeah. And a lot of these holes were quite long, right? And
that's right.
Because of the angle too.
They were usually drilled at shallow angles. We had one hole that was drilled at minus 35, that is 35 degrees from the horizontal. One hole that was collared at minus 40 degrees from horizontal went to 830 meters.
Wow.
And that's with a man-portable drill rig. So these are actually, as a technological drilling feat, was pretty impressive.
Yeah. But why would we drill this way on this project?
The reason we drilled, that's a good question. The reason we drilled such shallow angle holes was so that we would get a maximum cut across these high angle structures and the blocks between those structures.
Right, yeah.
The idea is that we may have blind mineralization. By blind, I mean that it doesn't come up to the surface. It isn't exposed at the present levels of erosion, so that we could hit or intersect those vein zones with those holes. And we did hit some of them. In hole 30, for example, right here, we had a vein zone in this block. There's no surface expression of it at all. It's about a half meter, ran over 1 kilo of silver.
Right.
So that is very encouraging to us, and it confirms the piano key model that we have been talking about.
Right.
And we first proposed more than 2 years ago.
Yeah. The Horst and the Grobens. And
right. Horst are upraised blocks, and Grobens are down-thrown blocks, and so you have different levels of erosion.
Correct. Yes.
Right there. So that has confirmed that idea. As well as hitting fault zones between blocks at different depths. So this is where we are now. We tested, of the 25 or so vein zones that we've identified, we have tested 19 of them with drilling. And of those 19, we got 14 of them that showed high-grade results, above 300 grams, say.
Why stop at 19, not drill the rest to 25?
Well, we had to prioritize, and part of it is that some of the vein zones do not seem so attractive on the surface because they're, say, hosted strictly in intrusive rocks. We believe that the best, for what we know of the historical mining, the best zones occur in the andesites or the limestones in close contact with either limestone or the granodiorite or the intrusive rocks. If you're only in intrusive rocks, from what we have seen, it doesn't develop such good vein mineralization or such good widths.
Right. Okay.
Now that's not to say that we're forgetting about them. They're just lower priority for now.
Right. Fair enough. So what did we basically accomplish from the phase 1, and now how do we transform now to the phase 2?
What's the next step?
Next step. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first thing we did was synthesize everything we had. And of course, that was an ongoing thing that we were doing as we were drilling.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now that we have this set of information and another set of information, and I'll get to that in a second.
Right.
We can now prioritize drilling for the next program. So what we did was the 3 members of the technical committee, that's Peter McGaw and David Jones, who are old friends of mine and directors of Minaurum, and I sat together and went through all the vein zones and prioritized them for further drilling. So it was a thumbs up or thumbs down or thumbs sideways vote, and we came up with 3 tiers. And the first tier was the highest priority, and those are 6 or 7 vein zones. They include, and I can show you on this map, priority drilling: San Jose, Europas, Nueva Europa, Pulpito, Alessandra, Travessia, Zambona, Purisima, which is up in here, and Promontorio. In the northern part of the Minas Nuevas area. So that's what we've done, is make that priority on the basis of the geological characteristics and the intercepts from our previous drilling program on a 20,000 meter program to follow up on these holes. That follow-up will consist of holes stepping out from our best intercepts, stepping out 100 to 150 meters to the sides and up and down, and then with further justification and encouragement, keep stepping out on roughly the same distances.
Right, and it won't be these long holes that we've been doing before. Or
No, that's right.
It'll be,
they'll mostly
rigs.
be steeper angle and shorter. We'll still have to do some long holes.
Right, of course, but
Yeah,
it won't
but
be
that's right.
the phase 1 exploration strategy.
Not like that. The strategy has changed now.
Correct.
So
Okay.
that's right. That's right.
So Steve, I mean, we're talking about the vein map over there, the 26 veins, and you said you kept talking about this new information. So what is this new information you're talking about?
A resident of the town of Alamos gave me a set of old mining information, and much to my considerable surprise and delight, it turned out to be technical information about past drilling programs and reports of the mining history, of the specifics of the mining history going back into the 1880s and 1890s. In this report, one of the things that this report included was descriptions of a drilling program that took place from 1979 to 1982. Mm-hmm. I was not even aware that such a program had happened.
Right.
So this was a very surprising revelation.
Yeah.
One of the things that it includes is, if you look up here, this is a longitudinal section of part of the Promontorio mine. This is from a report from Terra Mining and Exploration. They are reporting here the results of an underground drilling campaign that occurred in 1961 and then in 1966.
Right.
It confirms what I had known, because I had met an old man in the town of La Aduana who worked as an underground driller and told me about this program, but I had never seen any data. And here it is. And now we have enhanced this illustration with and converted the ounce per ton to grams per metric ton.
Yeah.
And it shows below the old workings, it shows 8 meters of 274 grams, 2.4 meters of nearly 600 grams. 7.6 meters of 972 grams, almost a kilo of silver.
She pointed to 1.2.
There's
5,000.
1.2 meters of 5 kilos of silver. Now, this is below the old workings that were abandoned by the Promontorio Mining Company in 1896 because the price of silver in that year took a dive and they ran out of money.
Okay.
And that's why the mining stopped in 1896. And I say that with such certainty because this report contains the minutes of the meeting in 1896 in London of the board of directors of Promontorio discussing the mine.
Interesting.
And why they closed. So now we know that some Mexican prospectors have been in there since this drilling happened and were probably high grading from pillars and remnant mineralization. I have been told that they did not go below because it was flooded.
Right. Yeah.
So they didn't have the capacity to open that up.
Right.
To do more work. So this is open ground below these workings. This is one of the new target priority areas. Further north, at the northern end of what we call the Minas Nuevas vein zone, there were two mines: the Purisima mine and the Zambona mine. We now know, because we have these drawings. This was also in the archive, the documentation that I received just less than 2 months ago. We know that they got at Purisima, they got to about the 350 foot level. So about a little more than 100 meters depth.
Meters, okay.
At the Zambona mine, which is showed. Oh, it's not. It's actually not on here. Oh yeah, here at Zambona, they got to 700 feet. 700 feet, not meters.
Okay.
So we know that they got to about 250 meters maybe. The drilling by Terra Mines drilled vein intersections below that depth.
Okay, interesting.
They also extended a couple of those holes and found another vein in the footwall of the Zambona vein zone, and that was a blind discovery.
Wow.
We didn't even know, I had no idea about that, and now I know.
Interesting.
So one of the things we're going to do that I will be proposing for our upcoming program is trying to reproduce a couple of these holes in that Minas Nuevas area. Because one of the things that I found out was that I did not know what the orientation of the chutes were. And now I know.
Okay.
Because we have these longitudinal sections.
Right.
So now we have that information to where, I cannot read this without my glasses. When I put my glasses on, it comes into focus. This is what this information has done to this project and has brought things into focus in a way that was not, we just didn't have that understanding before.
Right.
This has really changed my perspective of the down plunge, down dip potential, and understanding of why they stopped when they did. It wasn't that they ran out of ore. It was that they ran out of ore that they could mine economically at that time, in a time when the silver price had dropped to something like from $1 to about 50 cents.
Yeah.
In the 1890s, and then the other thing that is the Quintera mine. The Quintera mine kept working until about 1907. In 1907, if you remember your economic history, there was a worldwide financial crisis.
Right.
And the price of silver took a big dive in that year as well. This is a longitudinal section of the Quintera mine. It shows where the stopes were. There's a steep plunge to the southwest. It got to 16 levels separated by 100-foot intervals. So they got to 500 meters depth. There's a report in this collection from the mine superintendent, dated 1908, that they talk about that the lowest level, the vein being 10 feet wide, and that the grade continued.
Wow.
But they shut down because it was no longer economic in the face of a falling silver price. They must have had a lot of water.
Yeah.
They were pumping, probably with steam engines, I'm supposing,
yeah,
and driving the pumps. And it was it must have been very expensive for them at that time, so they had to shut down. There were also, I suspect, labor relations issues. This is just before the Mexican Revolution started, so those were other factors. So I think that there's also potential down plunge of that structure, and that's something else I want to propose is some exploratory holes to test that idea.
Interesting. So we're here at the core shack at PDAC 2020, and we have our 2 core boxes from our phase 1 drilling. Obviously, selected some of the core, otherwise we'd be bringing up a whole truckload full of core, right? So that's
more than a truckload.
More than a truckload.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Steve Maynard, our VP of Exploration. So let's talk about some rocks here. I mean, there's some really good holes that we have here that are on display, and
what
do we have?
This is core from part of our drilling. And one thing I have to say is we are not showing here our highest grade intercept. We've showed that before, and I think that there's some other video about that.
Yeah, that's right.
These are from the purpose of this is to show a greater variety of what we've seen on the project, a greater variety of mineralized zones. This is an intersection from hole 15. It's 85 centimeters of 398 grams of silver. 61 parts per billion of gold, a little bit of base metals, including 1.7% zinc. Notice the veinlets of quartz carbonate cutting an andesitic host rock. This is part of a broad zone that measured almost 90 meters across, that averaged about an ounce of silver. Now that's not economical, but it tells you that there's a lot of silver in this fractured rock.
Yeah.
And so it's of intrigue. We also know that there's some historical holes. Remember, I said in that package that were drilled in this area that also showed some pretty interesting results.
Yeah.
The next 2 intervals are from hole 25. Now this drilled the part of the Promontorio zone. The blue material is chrysocolla, hydrous copper silicate. These intervals ran, we're talking here, 35 centimeters of 1.2 kilos of silver, 14 grams of gold, 4.9% copper, 2.5% lead, and 7.5% zinc. This orange material is partly wolfenite, lead molybdate, so we have values of molybdenum in here as well. There's also anomalous tungsten. The host rock here is limestone. It's obviously greatly altered. It's scarred. But this is the kind of material that they were mining in the old days in the Promontorio mine, and we believe that there is potential down dip below the old workings in this area.
Yeah, I just want to interrupt real quickly. You know what I'm noticing about the core and how it visually looks, right? You're seeing it's quite diverse. You're seeing is this kind of indicative of the multiple stages of mineralization that we have or development, or pulses?
In part, but it's also different styles of mineralization in different areas.
Okay.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because the next interval is this from hole 11. There's not a lot of silver in this. It's only 44. It's about an ounce and a half.
Right.
But it has 4% lead and 16% zinc.
Interesting.
And the zinc is largely in a mineral called willemite, which is a silicate, a zinc silicate. It's got, and it fluoresces quite nicely.
Oh, yeah.
With a black light. But this was a kind of a surprise. We thought that a lot of this black material was going to be manganese, and there is in fact manganese in this.
Yeah.
But this is evidence of oxidation of primary zinc ores, mainly sphalerite. And one question we have is this, in fact, hypogene oxidation or merely supergene oxidation? Notice the depths. We're down here at 400 meters downhole.
Right.
So is this if this is supergene oxidation?
400
I guess
meters.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Now, go ahead. Hole 29, now back to the San Jose zone, we see 2 different things going on here. This hole 15 is at the northern end of the San Jose zone. Hole 29 is at the southern end of the San Jose zone. And notice that not just the color, but look at the texture of this material. This is a breccia with a lot of different clasts in here. We have found that the dark colored fragments are what appears to be carrying the silver. So the question is, where did those fragments come from? This intersection was at about 130 meters depth. It doesn't give you a whole lot of room up. Right. Besides, we don't think that those fragments came from above. They probably came from down below. So an obvious thing to do is to drill down at greater depth and see if we can't find where that came from.
Correct.
So this is an interesting thing. This is about close to 2 kilometers south of hole 15 on the same zone, on the San Jose zone.
Interesting.
Now, hole 30, you might remember that I said that in one of our holes, hole 30, we intersected a blind vein zone. Well, here's the interval. This was a 40 centimeter interval that ran 1.1 kilos of silver. Notice that amethystine quartz, that's probably later than the silver phase. Notice the bluish green material. That, again, this is chrysocolla, and again we have this association of copper with silver. Mm-hmm.
And actually, Peter McGraw was talking about that earlier.
Oh, he was, yeah.
How, you know, the very interesting about our project is that there's a lot of copper that's throughout the system.
Yes.
And I mean, we're still yet to figure out why that is. We're doing a lot more
right.
work, but it's interesting that you mentioned that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And it's an important thing to remember about this project is that silver, almost everywhere on the project where we see high grade silver, we have 1% or so of copper.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the story here. Hole 35. This is in the Pulpito zone. This is in the northern part of the Alamos District, or our project. I'm showing 2 zones from hole 35. The first zone is at about 159, 160 meters, where we have a 20 centimeter sample that ran 367 grams of silver and 6.7 grams of gold. This is part of the main Pulpito vein zone. A thing about this hole, and I can't show everything here, but this hole had several zones measuring meters wide of quartz carbonate veining with anomalous silver and a little bit of base metals with it. That quartz carbonate association tells me that that it's very possible that we're just too high in the system here, that we need to drill deeper on these zones to get a little higher temperature down where you would have more mineralization happening, a little less carbonate, a little more quartz. I think that's a possibility, and it's one thing we want to pursue in our upcoming drilling campaign. Deeper in the hole, in hole 35, we have this one. There's 2 rows here. They're part of a 1 meter 5 centimeter sample that ran 650 grams of silver.
Wow.
This is part of what we know as the Quintera zone. In that we're underneath a canyon here. We're about 100 to 150 meters below the surface in this particular intersection. This is one of the things I want to follow up on in the second campaign. But notice again, it's quartz carbonate veining, cutting andesites. These are not these nicely well-behaved veins. Rather, they're broad zones of this quartz carbonate veining. But there's a meter of 650 grams.
Interesting. Wow.
So it's obviously something we want to follow up on. And then the last hole I want to show here is hole 38. This is in the Alessandra vein zone, which is in the far southeast of the areas we have mapped.
Right. Yep.
One of the things that characterizes this is that we have anomalous gold in surface samples, high copper, couple of percent copper, and the presence of specular hematite. Specular hematite is not something we have seen elsewhere on the property. Silver is relatively low, is very low in comparison with the rest of the project, but we have this intrigue of gold. Now, I'm going to reach and grab a sample here. This is a slab from a surface sample that ran 102 grams of gold per ton. This, of course, got our attention. This is by far and away the highest gold sample that we got anywhere on the project. It turns out that on this particular slab, there is, trying to find it here. It might be in the other on the twin piece, but associated with this kind of quartz, we saw a flake of visible gold. So that was very encouraging, and we thought, well, let's see what happens when we drill it. Well, we drilled it, and we had significant copper assays. Here we have a 60 centimeter interval that had 28 grams of silver, 22 ppb of gold, nearly 7% copper. And then further down in the hole, at a little past 400 meters, we have 1.5% copper, and this black material is mainly specular hematite, iron oxide.
Right.
And this sample ran 18% iron.
Wow.
We're not prospecting for iron here. This is not an iron mine. That's not what I'm saying. But it's just to show you again the variety of the mineralization types we're seeing on the project. We did not see any quartz veining in this particular vein zone in this hole. So it could be that what we need to find is where the quartz veining is in the Alessandro zone, and see if we can find that, and see if that does in fact bump our gold values up. So this is an intriguing area. We'd like to know more about it.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's what we got this is what we have from phase 1 here.
Well, thanks, Steve. Beautiful looking core. We're well on our way to doing our next phase 2 drilling, and we'll definitely have more core to show you as we go and continue our drilling once assays are assayed and ready for release.
Stay tuned. Don't touch that dial.
Yeah.